I turned just as the head of black hair emerged from behind the refrigerator door to see who was causing such a racket. But he wasn't what frightened me. Next to the island in the kitchen was a black dog, beautiful but with a look in its eyes as if it wanted to eat me one morsel at a time. It was a Labrador, I thought, but I couldn't say. My eyes went from the dog to the boy standing beside it. I looked with curiosity, but also with surprise at who could only be William's son, Nicholas Lester. The first thing that came into my head when I saw him was, look at those eyes. They were sky blue, bright as the walls of my room, a complete contrast to his raven hair, which was unkempt and damp with sweat. He must have just worked out because he had on leggings and a baggy muscle shirt. My God, he was handsome. I had to admit that, but I didn't let what I was thinking distract me from who was in front of me. My new brother. The person I'd have to live with for a year. A year that I sensed would be outright torture. And his dog went on growling at me as if it could guess at my thoughts. "You're Nicholas, right?" I asked, trying to control my fear of that vicious animal that wouldn't stop growling. I was surprised and angry at the way he looked over at his pet and smiled. "The one and only," he said, and then looked back at me. "You must be the daughter of my father's new wife?" I couldn't believe he'd say it so coldly. He rolled his eyes. "So your name was?" I couldn't help feeling shocked as he asked that question. He didn't know my name. Our parents were married, my mother and I had moved, and he didn't know what to call me.
"Noah," she replied contemptuously. "My name's Noah." It was funny how she scowled at me. My new stepsister seemed offended I didn't give what her and her mother's names were, but I had to admit that at least I remembered her mother's. How couldn't I? The last 3 weeks she'd spent more time in my house than I had. Raphael and Morgan was now a part of my life, and to make matters worse, she'd brought company. "Isn't that a dude's name?" I asked, knowing it would bother her. No offence, obviously, I added when I saw her honey-coloured eyes open with surprise. "It's a girl's name too," she answered a second later. I watched her look at me and then at Thor, my dog, and I couldn't help laughing. Probably your limited vocabulary doesn't include the word unisex. Thor kept growling and baring his teeth. It wasn't his fault. We trained him not to trust strangers. With one word from me, he turned back into the sweet dog he always was, but it was too fun seeing the look of fear on my new stepsister's face. "Don't worry about my vocabulary, it's pretty extensive," I replied, closing the fridge and turning to face her for real this time. "There's one word I know that my dog loves. Starts with an A, then 2 T's, then A-C-K. She looked scared and I couldn't help but laugh. Still, I couldn't take my eyes off her hair. Its colour was strange, somewhere between dirty blonde and red. "Very funny," she said sarcastically, but obviously terrified. "Get him out of here, he looks ready to kill me." She took a step back. As she did, Thor took a step forward. Good boy, I thought. Maybe she could use a scare, a special reception to let her know whom this house really belonged to and how unwelcome she was. "Thor, forward," I ordered him sternly. Noah looked back and forth from him to me and stepped further back until she hit the wall. Thor walked slowly toward her, growling and showing his teeth. He was scary, but I knew he wouldn't do anything, not unless I ordered him to. "What are you doing?" she asked. "This isn't funny." But it was. "My dog usually gets along with everyone. It's weird that he's on the verge of attacking you," I remarked, amused as she tried to control her fear. "Are you going to do anything?" she whined. "Do anything? How about I tell you to go back where you came from?" "You've been here, 5 minutes and you're already bossing people around," I said, walking over to the tap and pouring a glass of water. "Maybe I should leave you here for a while to get to know the place on your own." "Well, you dropped on your head often as a child. Get that dog away from me." I turned a little surprised at her audacity, and she just insulted me. I think even my dog got it because he walked closer to her. She hardly had any space to move. Then, before I could stop her, Noah turned in a fright and grabbed the first thing in reach on the counter, a frying pan. Before she could hit Thor, I grabbed his collar with one hand and stopped her with the other. "What the f*** are you doing?" I shouted, grabbing the pan and putting it back on the counter. My dog was furious, and Noah shrank into my chest, stifling a scream. I was surprised she turned to me for protection when I was the one threatening her. "Thor, sit." He relaxed, sat down and started wagging his tail cheerfully. I looked down at Noah, who was clutching my t-shirt with both hands. I smiled, but then she seemed to realise what was happening. She raised her hands and shoved me away. "You an idiot or what? First, this better be the last time you try to attack my dog. Second," as I looked at her, I noticed the freckles on her nose and cheeks. "Don't ever insult me again or we're going to have problems." Her expression was strange. Her eyes were glued to my face, but then they moved down to my chest, incapable of holding my stare. I stepped back. My breathing had sped up, but I had no idea why. I'd had enough of her for one day, and I'd only known her for 5 minutes. It would be best if we got along, little sister, I said, turning my back and grabbing my sandwich off the counter and heading for the door. Don't call me that, I'm not your sister, not even close, she replied. She said it with so much hate, so much sincerity that I stopped to look at her again. Her eyes were shining with determination, and I knew she was no happier than I was about our parents being together.